On December 22, 1902, RMS Gaelic set sail from Incheon, South Korea with the first 102 Korean immigrants to the United States and arrived in Honolulu, Hawaii on January 13, 1903. Approximately 7,226 Koreans immigrated to Hawaii following this first voyage, up until 1905 when the Japanese government put restriction on Korean immigrants. 84% of such Korean immigrants were young men in their 20s, and 9% were women and the remaining 7% were children. Korean immigration was sanctioned between 1924 and 1965, and door to immigration was open only to families of United States soldiers, adoptees, and students who wished to study abroad, who readily assimilated into the United States society upon arrival. Thus, the formation of Korean immigrant community was not possible. The immigration reform in 1965 allowed for official entry of Korean immigrants into the United States, leading to a rapid increase in the Korean immigrant population. According to the 1940 census, there were only 8,570 Korean immigrants across the United States. The number had soared to 70,000 by the 70s and 350,000 by the 80s. The 1970s marked the beginning of the influx of Koreans into the United States in search of the American dream. In the 1960s, wig shops sprang up in Manhattan and Broadway as one of the first Korean small businesses in New York. By the 1970s, with the increase in the Korean immigrant population, small businesses diversified in forms of groceries, laundromats, delis, and restaurants. In the 1990s, tensions increasingly arose between Korean American communities and other ethnic minority groups. Two incidents that showcased this tension was the Korean African American conflict on Church Avenue in Brooklyn and Los Angeles riots that took place on April 29 in 1992. LA riots initially started as a backlash against the Caucasian community by the African Americans, but Korean Americans became the largest victim. LA riots served as an eye-opener to Korean Americans all across the United States. Korean Americans came to the realization that their accomplishments built solely on diligence and hard work could vanish in an instant. Korean Americans were further infuriated that the law enforcement system showed no effort to protect the Korean Americans. The mainstream media even blamed the Korean American small businesses for providing poor service to African American customers, which caused their riot. The importance of fostering benevolent relationship with other ethnic minority groups and participating in United States politics finally dawned on the Korean American community. This laid out the foundation for Korean American Voters Council, which later had become known as the Korean American Civic Empowerment. All ethnic minority groups in the United States are indebted to the Black Civil Rights Movement in one way or another. Discrimination and dehumanization that African Americans faced since the days of institutionalized slavery were unimaginable by today's standards of individual rights. Trains and buses had segregated seats by race, and blacks could not sit in the section reserved for whites. People of color were forbidden to enter universities for white students. Blacks had to pass a difficult written exam to become registered voters. African American interest groups, united under the name NAACP, began to bring down these discriminatory policies one court case after another. However, it was not easy to eliminate de facto discriminatory practices against blacks that were deeply embedded across the United States society. Arrest of Rosa Parks in 1955 after her refusal to give up her seat to a white passenger in a bus started a chain reaction of civil disobedience and strikes by African Americans. Martin Luther King Jr. mobilized black activists across the nation and culminated a powerful civil disobedience movement backed by African American churches. The movement reached its climax at the Civil Rights March on Washington in 1963, leading to the passage of the Civil Rights Act by the U.S. Congress in 1964. The Jewish community holds a unique and special place in the United States society. Jewish Americans have assumed key positions in America's economic and political circles, and its grassroots lobbying groups such as AIPAC and its leaders, the Grass Top, are exerting tremendous amounts of influence on United States politics. Other ethnic minority groups have tried to mimic the Jewish American community without much success. Korean American community was no exception because it had failed to take into account the cultural, religious, and economic differences that existed between them and the Jewish community. Furthermore, the Jewish American community tends to be viewed with wariness and hostility by other ethnic groups due to their aggressive approach to political lobbying. Korean American community needed to seek a different path. Korean American civic empowerment found its method of empowerment in grassroots activism. KACE came to a conclusion that educating the Korean Americans about their civil rights and systematically mobilizing Korean American voters would strengthen the Korean American community to rival that of the Jewish Americans. Meanwhile, reforms were being made in political funding in the United States. Corporations and millionaires were no longer able to provide unlimited funding to politicians, and the system changed so that politicians would rely more on small-scale donations spread over a large group of people. This has strengthened the influence of individuals and grassroots on politics. Politicians began to cater to the needs of each individual voters more closely. The mobilized voters were becoming the center of the United States politics. The initiative set forth by KACE corresponded with the needs of the times and the shift in paradigm of the United States politics. Korean American Civic Empowerment was founded in the basement of a prep school in Flushing, New York on April 29, 1996. At the time, voter participation rate of Korean Americans was critically low. Both voter registration rate and voter participation rate were below 5%. Although Korean American community had begun to form in Flushing, it went unnoticed. Elected officials paid little attention to their Korean American constituents. Korean Americans were highly invested in businesses, but were not aware that voter registration was required for voting. Many had a faulty belief that a social security number was all they needed to vote, like how it is back in Korea. KACE conducted voter registration drives at churches, Buddhist temples, supermarkets, and senior centers. Wherever there was a large group of Koreans, one could count on KACE to be there. As a result, the voter registration rate of Korean Americans has risen to 60%, and voter turnout has increased to 15% as of August 2014. Providing language assistance to Korean American voters was urgent. Census of year 2000 served as a turning point for Korean American community's entry into mainstream American society. KACE undertook administrative work as the task force for census and conducted census campaign with much success. This led to the Queens County Board of Election providing language service to Korean voters starting in 2002. And voter registration form was made available in Korean. The similar project was undertaken in 2010 and brought about the similar result for Bergen County, New Jersey. Although voter registration rate of Korean Americans was increasing, it was futile unless the registered voters participated in the elections. KACE conducted voter hotline on election days and worked closely with the Board of Elections to prevent problems that may arise at voting poll sites, making voting process as accessible and easy for Korean Americans as possible. In addition, KACE has published election guides to inform Korean Americans about elected officials and candidates. As a result, voter turnout rate has increased to 60% for presidential elections and 50% on average, from the mere 5% when KACE was first founded. KACE is currently promoting the 80/80 campaign, which seeks to increase both voter registration and voter turnout rates to 80%. Korean American community began to be taken notice of by mainstream America and elected officials. The tactic of mobilization of voters into an organized group had begun to work. Governments on both local and federal levels started to pay attention to Korean American voters. KACE seized this opportunity to launch large-scale projects for the empowerment of the Korean American community. Passage of House Resolution 121, also known as the Comfort Women Resolution in 2007, was the first accomplishment made by grassroots efforts of Korean Americans. This project was followed up by lobbying for similar resolutions to be passed on state level and erecting Comfort Women memorials across the United States. These projects were made possible by the efforts of mobilized citizens. The removal of parking restrictions on Northern Boulevard is another example of a project that advocated for the interests of Korean Americans. In 2009, high school students enrolled in Korean American Civic Empowerment summer internship program started the project to remove this cumbersome parking restriction. We went out onto the streets and we actually counted the cars that were passing in each of the lanes to figure out whether there was any increase in traffic from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. like the Transportation Bureau has said it would be. And what we found was that there really wasn't any dramatic change in the traffic during those hours. The traffic along the Northern Boulevard was actually pretty consistent throughout the day. which proved our point that the parking restriction is pretty pointless. And what we also found was that the traffic congestion that did happen from time to time was actually caused by police vehicles, because a lot of the times they would be parallel parking to issue tickets to these cars that were parked along Northern Boulevard. We started a petition drive. So we actually wrote up a petition form basically asking people to support the removal of such parking restriction that was affecting the Korean American small businesses detrimentally. And so we got these petition forms and we walked around that entire area and maybe even beyond to get these signatures from business owners and residents. And we ended up getting just thousands of signatures. So what we did with those signatures is that we delivered them to local elected officials. We also delivered them to the community board. And so eventually what those people who saw that there was all this support behind our cause did was they brought this issue up to the NYC Transportation Bureau. I didn't think that this little project that us high school students had started would really go anywhere, and I really doubted that it would lead to actual changes in the governmental policy in New York City. So I was really pleasantly surprised when I heard that they actually decided to remove the parking restriction. And I think it just goes to show that what we do here at KACE as interns actually brings about changes for the interest of the Korean American community. So it felt good to know that. Korean American store owners can now conduct their small businesses in ease without fear of parking tickets. This project showcased how grassroots initiatives set forth by the Korean American community brought about tangible change to the local governmental policy. The ashes of Los Angeles riots in 1992 left us with a different kind of American dream, the political empowerment of the Korean Americans. And that dream has been pursued by educating individuals about their voting rights and mobilizing Korean American voters to create a strong, powerful mass. As a result, Korean Americans have been recognized as one of the more influential minority groups in the United States. This tremendous growth was demonstrated during the Korean American Grassroots Conference of 2014, where 2 United States senators and 11 representatives honored us with their presence. Grassroots have become the new paradigm of United States politics. Citizens have more freedom than ever to express their ideas and opinions, and elected officials can look forward to the next election only if they are receptive to the thoughts of their constituents. The first thing that President Barack Obama had set out to do upon his graduation from Harvard Law School was accruing voters in the slums of Chicago. With support from those voters, he was elected into the position of Senator of Illinois, then into his presidency. The voters are what moves the current United States politics. Korean American civic empowerment will continue in our endeavor to increase the voter participation rate of Korean Americans to 80% through our voter registration drives and voting rights advocacy. And we will continue striving to empower the Korean American community to become the most respected and responsible members of the United States society. We ask for your continued interest and support in our cause.